Make sure to like and subscribe if you believe respect isn't about what someone does, but what they've lived through, especially for the men and women who wore the uniform with pride, even when the world forgot their names. He walked those halls like a shadow, silent, invisible, and mostly ignored. Every morning, before the first cadet even rubbed sleep from their eyes, the old man in the gray janitor's uniform had already clocked in. No name tag, just a silent badge of age and dignity. The wrinkles in his face, the tired bend in his spine, and that faded baseball cap with the word "retired" stitched above a patch that only a few bothered to notice. Most didn't even look. At Westbridge Military Training Academy, excellence and arrogance were expected. It was the unofficial language. Recruits came from polished suburbs and military lineages, boys with clean records and cleaner boots, ready to command before they even knew how to salute. They strutted through the halls with bravado, like they were auditioning for history. And him? He was just the janitor, the guy who scrubbed their boot prints from the marble floors and emptied the trash filled with coffee cups that fed their egos. Some of them mocked him. Not all, but enough. They'd nudge each other when he passed, making jokes just loud enough for him to hear. One called him Sergeant Mop. Another asked if he got lost on the way to the VA hospital. They thought it was funny, thought it was harmless. And because he never responded, because he kept pushing that broom with the same calm rhythm day after day, they mistook his silence for shame. But it wasn't shame. It was something else. Something they didn't yet understand. One morning, about a week before the Academy's prestigious annual symposium, things got worse. The cafeteria buzzed with late breakfast chatter when one of the bolder recruits, a sophomore cadet named Landon, all Southern charm and swagger, deliberately knocked over his tray as the old man passed. Eggs, toast, and orange juice hit the floor like a failed mission. "Oops, swing and a miss," Landon grinned loud enough for the whole room. "Looks like we've got a mess, soldier." The way he said "soldier" made everyone chuckle. The old man didn't react. He looked at the mess, nodded slowly, and began to clean. Not a word, not a glance. The room got louder after that. Confidence inflated by cruelty. Other cadets joined in. Crumpled napkins, spilled coffee. One even dropped a banana peel like some cartoon gag. And still, the old man moved deliberately, like the chaos didn't disturb him, like he'd seen worse, because he had. But they didn't know that. To them, he was just background noise, a man with a broom in a building full of stars and stripes, forgotten by the institution he might have once served. And maybe that's what hurt the most. How easily people forget. How quickly they move on when the cameras stop rolling. When the parades end, and the medals are tucked away in drawers. How can a man dedicate his entire life to a country, only to be dismissed as an afterthought by its future defenders? No one ever asked his name. No one wondered why he walked with a slight limp, or why he sometimes stared too long at the wall where the Academy kept its honor wall. Portraits of great leaders, brave men and women who had changed history with courage and sacrifice. Now and then, his eyes would rest on one particular photo in that hallway, a black and white image of a young officer saluting in a sandstorm, dust swirling around him like the fingerprint of war. He'd pause there, just long enough for his breath to settle, then move on. That week, the disrespect seemed to intensify, like the whole place was building toward something. Maybe it was the symposium, maybe it was nerves, or maybe it was just how easy it is for people to gang up on the quiet ones when no one's watching. One night, someone even left a fake job application on his janitor cart. It was a printout from a prank website. Application for senior custodial commander. Under skills, someone had scribbled Mop Fu, a pun on Kung Fu, and Advanced Wood, trash deployment. Again, no reaction. He folded it once, tucked it into his pocket, and went on with his work. But what they didn't see, what they never imagined, was that the old man never needed their approval. Because long ago, in places they'd never seen, he'd earned something far more sacred than their shallow applause. Something they couldn't recognize because they hadn't lived long enough to understand it. The kind of respect that doesn't come from medals or speeches, but from silence, sacrifice, and surviving when others didn't. While they slept, he worked. While they laughed, he remembered. He remembered the names of every soldier who never made it home. He remembered what sand feels like in your teeth when you're under fire, and how silence is louder than gunfire when the mission ends. He remembered orders, battle maps, and lives once led, not just under command, but with honor. The academy, for all its pomp, had forgotten its foundation. In its pursuit of excellence, it had left humility behind. And no one, not even the instructors, thought to remind them, until the day the general walked in. But that's another part of the story. For now, all you need to know is this. They called him Janitor. They laughed, mocked, and never gave a second thought to what he once was. But they were about to learn that real rank isn't worn. It's earned. And sometimes the quietest man in the room is the one who's lived the loudest life. It was the morning of the symposium, an event circled in red on every cadet's calendar for weeks. Pressed uniforms, polished boots, medals shined to mirror perfection. The Academy's great hall, usually reserved for formal ceremonies and visiting. Dignitaries buzzed with tension. This wasn't just any event. This year, they were told, a decorated four-star general, General Marcus Denning himself, would deliver the keynote. A man known for leading elite missions across 4 continents and mentoring some of the most successful officers of the EBP last decade. Saying people were nervous would be an understatement. Cadets filled rows with stiff posture and wide eyes, adjusting their uniforms for the 5th or 6th time. Officers lined the room's edges, each with a clipboard or radio, ensuring everything was perfect. Everything had to be perfect. Outside that pristine hall, just minutes before the event, the old janitor pushed his cart through the corridor, as always. Same slow gait, same broom propped beside him. But this morning, he moved even slower. He paused at the corridor's end, adjusted the brim of his retired cap, and looked toward the ceremony hall where voices echoed and chairs were being arranged. His gaze lingered. Back inside, the room fell silent as the double doors opened and General Denning entered. Denning wasn't a man you could ignore. Tall, broad, and composed like a storm you knew better than to provoke. He carried himself with the gravity of someone who had witnessed history firsthand and helped write it. Everyone stood. Salutes echoed in unison. Cameras clicked. The general nodded once, his face unreadable. But instead of heading to the podium as expected, Denning did something strange. He kept walking, past the high-ranking officers, past the commandant, past the line of cadets staring straight ahead, and directly toward the man standing in the corridor. Every eye followed. Every conversation died in stunned silence. And then it happened. General Denning stopped in front of the janitor, looked him straight in the eyes, and saluted. A full, formal salute. No one moved. No one dared. And then the general spoke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for those nearest to hear. which was all it took for the news to spread like wildfire in that airtight room. "Sir, it's an honor to finally meet you in person." Gasps rippled through. The back rows. Some heads jerked around. A cadet's jaw dropped. "Sir." He called him sir. The janitor blinked slowly, and for the first time anyone had ever seen, returned the salute. Not with any dramatic flair, but with the silent precision of a man who'd done it thousands of times before, in places where doing it wrong could cost lives. General Denning turned to the room, cleared his throat, and said, "Before I begin my address, I want to recognize someone in this building who has shaped more lives than I ever could. Someone who led men into battle long before many of you were even born. A man whose leadership, strategy, and sacrifice saved my life and the lives of 212 others during Operation Goliath." Murmurs exploded in the back rows. Operation Goliath, once top secret, only recently declassified. Denning continued, "His name isn't carved in stone. There are no wings or halls named after him here, but there should be. You know him as the janitor. I knew him as Commander Elias Rourke." It was like the air got sucked from the room. Some cadets looked confused. Others looked horrified. Landon, the same cadet who dropped that tray, stood frozen, pale-faced. Rourke. The janitor's name was Rourke. That name had echoed through classified briefings and military folklore for years. An officer so deeply embedded in covert ops and black missions that most of his career had been wiped from the books. Some thought he was myth. Others knew the truth. General Denning looked at Elias again and spoke directly. "Sir, I've waited years for this moment. You saved us. You sacrificed more than anyone ever asked. And now these cadets, the future of our military, deserve to know who you really are." Elias didn't smile, didn't puff his chest, didn't clear his throat. He simply nodded, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. Not because he wanted it, but because the truth always finds light. The cadets didn't know what to do. Half still stood. Some sat. A few glanced at each other, piecing together the moments they mocked him, ignored him, treated him like furniture. The punch landed like a gut blow. And then, as quietly as he'd entered, Elias stepped forward. He didn't need a microphone, didn't need a spotlight. But the general insisted. Would you speak to them, sir?" Denning asked. Elias hesitated, then looked across the room, at cadets who once judged him, at instructors who never stopped them, and at the walls that once told a version of the story without him, and finally said, "I'll speak. Not for me, but for those who never made it home." And so the room that once laughed behind his back fell completely silent, ready to listen. He stood there silently a moment, surveying the room. You could hear a pin drop. Cadets who once rolled their eyes at him now hung on his every word. And Elias Rourke, the so-called janitor, took a small step forward and began to speak. "I've seen young men break under pressure. I've seen leaders fall, not because they weren't strong, but because they lacked humility. I came home, not with pride in my chest, but ghosts in my heart. I didn't return to be honored. I came here to be close to what I loved, even if the world had forgotten me." He didn't cry, didn't raise his voice, just told truths. The kind you don't learn in books or drills. He spoke of the mission no one spoke of, the soldiers whose names never appeared in programs, and the cost of leadership when the bullets stop flying and the memories remain. Some cadets began to wipe their eyes. Even instructors shifted uncomfortably, realizing their silence had allowed disrespect to grow unchecked. And then he stopped. No grand finale, no call for applause, just silence. But what followed was something no one expected. The cadet who spilled that tray, the loudest, most arrogant of them all, stood up, chest tight with shame. He looked Elias in the eyes and said, "Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't know. But that's no excuse." Elias gave him a small nod. Nothing more. Then another cadet stood, and another. Soon the entire hall, every last one of them, stood up. Not to clap, to salute. One by one, in complete silence, 200 future officers stood in honor of the man they once overlooked. General Denning didn't interrupt, just stepped aside. And in that moment, Elias Rourke, quiet, humble, forgotten, wasn't just respected. He was remembered. He turned without a word, walked slowly down the aisle, and disappeared around the corner with his old broom, as if nothing had happened. Because respect isn't about a title. It's not a uniform. It's not even about a war story. It's about how you carry yourself when no one's watching, and how you treat those who carry the weight of sacrifice. If you believe no veteran should ever be forgotten, hit that like button and share this story, so the world remembers the silent heroes who walk among us every day.